Okay,
Good to
let's
see you.
going. Everyone, this is Linda. I'm Amber. Yeah, it's good to see you too. Do you want to do the
Yes,
intro?
we just dive in right away, right? Awesome.
Just dive in.
So
Dive
Amber
in.
and I are very happy for everyone who sees this right now. We thought a lot about what should be the first topic for our collaboration, right? And we were thinking a lot, and we were thinking that for the start of the year, it would make absolute sense to start with how to be really successful in 2023. So level up your goals. There are some things we want to share with you. We're very excited about it, which are very helpful to set smart goals. And that's what we focus on today, to set smart goals.
Yes, exactly. I love it. All about how to set your
Mhm.
goals in an effective way so you can actually achieve them. Because, especially as a coach, I'm sure you get this a lot. We often see people setting really big goals and then
Mhm.
it kind of just falls off. So that's what we don't want to do this year. So, Linda, you are a leadership coach. Do you want to quickly just tell
Yes,
us a
so
little bit about what you
I'm
do?
a leadership coach, but also a life coach in one, technically. So I work a lot with leaders, entrepreneurs, or actually just people who want to grow in personal mastery, which means self-leadership. So again, the leadership is there. So it has to do a lot with setting goals, a lot with self-awareness, a lot with personal growth, but also a lot with understanding that we need to work first on ourselves in order to become better and impactful and powerful leaders. So I love what I'm doing, and I love to see the growth, and I'm very excited about it. And in that is also a bit some of the mindset stuff and a lot of nice things about that. But there is something that has this passion of you also, right? Mindset.
Yes, yes, definitely mindset. Mindset shows
Mhm.
up in everything, especially I suppose I'm assuming especially with leadership coaching. But yeah, I mean my speciality, I'm a life coach and a mindset coach. I mostly focus on helping women with anxiety. We go through tools and strategies they can use to kind of manage their mind to live life a bit less chaotically, a bit more
Mhm.
intentionally, and feel a bit more fulfilled. So that's my main area. I mean, there's subsets of that. Like we always
Mhm.
go into self-worth,
Mhm.
self-confidence, body image issues, everything that's normally tied up with anxiety with women, especially. So yeah, that's my area. Very passionate about mindset. It's definitely one of my favorite topics. And I love talking about goal
Yes.
setting too. So good to go today.
Wonderful. Yeah, and before we dive into it, as we mentioned already, we want to start a focus today on SMART goals, right? And it's the specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and realistic, and timely. And why we bring that up, as Amber already mentioned, is that we have observed often that people often want to have right away the big goal fulfilled. And the problem is if you focus only on what's up here and you start here, you will get often disappointed. You will not see the success or the progress that you want to see because it takes much more to reach up there than just setting a goal. So starting with sub
Mm.
goals and how to set wise goals along the way, that is a really essential thing to be successful in today's time, right? That's why we're here.
100%. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, it's all about those little goals. And I know everyone might be rolling their eyes when they hear say smart goals because I know it gets talked about
Mhm.
a lot. But this is like we're kind of doing it
Mhm.
from a little bit of a different perspective with the
Mhm.
mindset work in there as well. So you might learn something even if you know what
Mhm.
smart goals are, right? So I guess something I see, especially with a lot of my clients, especially with my perfectionist clients. So if you're watching this, you know who you are. But to they tend to set goals hoping that somehow they're going to magically change their entire personality overnight and become this brand new person the next day. I'm going to go to the gym 5 times a week. I'm going to eat super healthy. I'm going to like save 20 grand this year when they've never saved before in their life. Like they just tend to really want to set massive goals. And it kind of gives you that dopamine
Mhm.
hit when you set a really big goal because you get to fantasize yourself achieving it and your whole life is going to change when you magically do this thing tomorrow. But unfortunately, that doesn't really translate into reality. And we tend to just give
Mhm.
up straight away, especially if you've ever said, I used to say this all the time, oh, I'm just going to start on Monday. And I'll start on Monday. And then by Tuesday, I've completely given up. I'm like totally
Mm-hmm.
all or
Mm-hmm.
nothing. One of my clients
You mean
is,
that
oh
doesn't
no,
work?
no,
I
she's a
see.
perfectionist.
Yes, indeed. That's so right.
I
Mm-hmm.
know, what a
Mm-hmm.
shock.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's true.
so that's why, and that's especially with New Year's resolutions, which is kind of why we wanted to do this live now at this time, is because it's the same with resolutions. Like you plan it based hoping that you're going to have a complete
Mm-hmm.
personality change overnight.
Mm-hmm.
It's not going to happen. So we like to be a
Mm-hmm.
bit more realistic so you can actually achieve things. That is kind of the number one reason I see people tend to fail
Mm-hmm.
their goals, or not fail, but not achieve
Yeah.
what they
And
want to
also I
achieve.
think like what came up, and you mentioned that word in the beginning already, you said intentional, right? When you work with the clients. And I think it's very essential that we
Mm,
understand that when we set goals, we need to be intentional about it. We should not just have an idea. It's nice to have dreams, but having dreams and working towards the dreams are two different things, right? You can have a dream and like, oh, that's so beautiful, and then
yeah.
sit there in the corner and wait for a miracle to happen instead of really intentionally going towards that, right? And I think sometimes that is also something that is a breaking point for some people when they understand, well, dreams are beautiful, but I need to do my part in that journey to grow and to work towards that, right? So it's so
Mm,
what we're doing
mm,
today is, I
yeah.
think, a key element to understand what you need to focus on. And I think along with that, and while we do it, people would realize that self-awareness is part of all of that, right? Being self-aware of yourself, your mind, your what triggers you and whatsoever should always be part of anything we say today to grow in your self-awareness.
Yeah, 100%. And not like, not trying to judge
Mm-hmm.
yourself negatively and like put yourself down and say, oh, I can't achieve that. That's too big. I'll just give up. It's not about that. It's
Mm-hmm.
about being realistic and kind to yourself and kind to your future self and making plans
Mm-hmm.
that will actually you'll follow through instead of, yeah, hoping. So do you have any, what's your
Oh well, I
goal
have too
for
many.
yourself this year? Do you have
No,
any?
I have some.
I have a lot too.
So
That's
I
fine.
want I'm working on increasing my business a bit more to be able to take on more clients this year. Yes, that would be
Hmm.
for this year would be
Yeah,
the time
nice.
to
I
increase it
also
because
have.
now I have more slots available. So it's the time to do that.
Yeah, yeah, nice. I know I also have too many goals, but I think my one, maybe as we can use it as an example for this call, because I haven't really fleshed it out, but I would like to start a
Mm.
podcast this year. So that's kind of my very rough goal that I have, but I haven't actually sat down
Mhm.
and done the specifics. So I can do that as we go through this,
That's
which might be
exciting.
fun.
That's very interesting. So how about we just dive into it? What do you think?
Let's
Awesome.
go. I'm ready.
Awesome. So let's start with the specifics. So every goal should be specific. And that's something well, my goal is to, well, let's, for example, say I want to increase the revenue of my business. If someone says that, not me today, okay, just in general. And it's a very vague goal to say, I want to expand the revenue of my business, because there is nothing to hold on to grab onto, no clear picture, because it's like, okay, how much do you want to, like, there are so many questions that are there. And the same thing is like with you, for example, right? It's like, okay, I want to start a podcast. But being specific means, right, if I ask you, well, Amber, how does it look like, right? Do you have any idea already? Anything how you can make it more specific, or?
I know, that's the thing. I mean, I guess if I was to narrow it down, I would say I would like to start a podcast for my business, for I Can See Leaves Now, that's in line with the work I do now, and I'd like to have it started
Yeah.
by
But that's
the end of
already
this year.
specific. You
If
say like
that's,
you have a podcast that increases your
yeah.
business, but also, as I know you shared before with me, to teach people more about the things that you're passionate about, right? So that is pretty
Mm,
specific, because it is like very
yeah.
clear what direction you want to take, right? And I think that's sometimes
Hmm.
very important that people understand that the more specific you are, like I work for, it doesn't matter if I work with leaders, with youth, I work sometimes with youth, and when I start telling them, okay, okay, what is your goal for this week? And they say something, it's like, okay, can you be more specific? And they're like, oh, and this moment of like, oh, yeah, how does it actually look like, right? With you, I know you did a lot of thought work in your whole work and all, because that's our job.
I know, I know. It's funny. Well, it's like what you were saying before about the dream, how you've got this dream, you've got this dream thing. It's like when we start breaking down to the specifics, it becomes less of a fantasy. It's like less fun to think about then. It's like, oh, well, I got to get specific about it. Like starting a podcast sounds so like, I'm going to start a podcast. And it's like all this amazingness. I don't have to actually think about it properly. And then you ask for the specifics and it's like, well, okay, there's actually going to be a lot more components of this than just the big dream.
And at the same time, what I observed, and you probably observed that too, is that when people start to be specific, as you said, like maybe the dreamy part gets lost, right? Because it becomes more reality. So it becomes more something they can grasp. But with that, it also becomes something they need to own. Right? It's something we need to say, okay, I own it now. This is the dream I had. I clarify, like I made it specific. Oh, it's actually something that can happen. Oh, now I have to take ownership of my dream. Because if you just have a dream and you say like, oh, this is my dream, and you're like, oh, oh, that's like very pretty, right? It's like, oh, I have to do something for that. But I think that is the point where people realize, do I really want that? Right? And I think that's also why it's important to be specific, so that people understand, okay, do I really want to work towards this dream, right? So as you mentioned before, you want to do a podcast, right? But you did already a lot of thinking about it, so it's a different thing. But I think, but there's this whole process for, like, you probably had this journey of like, I should maybe do it, and you start thinking about it, you start dreaming about it, and then you had to come to the point like, yes, I own it. Or how was it for you?
I totally get what you mean. And I think that also, you kind of touched on it just then, also about liking your reasons for setting the goal is very important too, and making sure you're doing it for the right reasons, because then when you do have to get into those specifics, when things start getting hard, you need to have a good reason to hang on to that actually means something to you, or else you're just going to give up immediately. Definitely. Okay, so that was S. That was the S in SMART goals. I'm going to do the M. So M is measurable. Now this is a pretty important one, but it's actually quite easy. And it's just make sure you can figure out when you've achieved the goal. Make sure it's measurable. So even for me, something like start a podcast, that's still very vague. I could record myself talking and post it on my, like, somewhere and say, oh, I've done my podcast. That wouldn't actually be in line with my goal, right? So you have to actually be able to measure it. So you want to say, what does it mean? What do I actually want when I start a podcast? Well, let's say I want to get 6 episodes out, and that's my goal. I can measure that very clearly. The same as if you want to get fitter, for example, like get more healthy. That's very vague. But if you say, well, I want to go to the gym twice a week, it's very measurable. Your brain knows, yes, I've achieved that. And that kind of serves two purposes. One is you can actually track your progress and you actually know when you've achieved it, which is good. But the other is, and especially like for my clients who are perfectionists, who can doubt themselves, if you don't know when you've achieved the goal, there's always going to be something else to do. And you're never going to get there, because it's like, well, I could do this, I could do this, I could be doing this better. You need to have a set milestone where you know, yes, I've achieved the goal. So that's what you need to be able to do, and that's why measurable is important.
Absolutely. And I think that's sometimes what people underestimate, this being able to measure it. Yeah. So, and that leads us actually to achievable, and I think that's the next thing where a lot of struggle come up, right? So every goal should be achievable. It is good if goals push us, if they bring us to this point of, okay, I need to grow, and there's something that stretches us and to extend, but it is important that the goals are achievable. That means that it's not something that without certain reasons, like if you don't have resources to achieve it, it's unlikely for us to really achieve it, right? That means, for example, for you, you need a microphone. Like, it sounds silly, right? But if you would be someone who never uses social media or anything like that, and you want to start a podcast, you don't have any equipment, it will be a bit hard to right away start with that, because first you would have to set yourself up to get all the things you need, right? The same is for
Mm-hmm.
me with when I say I want to take on more clients, I have to be really realistic and say like, or it's a different part, but is it achievable? The number of clients I target is it for the resources that I have, time, be it manpower, anything I have, is it achievable to really do that? And also it always, because what a lot of people underestimate, for example, we running a coaching business each, is that it's not just us coaching people, but we do also the administration, we do also the paperwork with the clients and stuff like that. So it has to be achievable in every way and form for us, right? Or for example, when people want to grow the business and it's about the revenue again, and it's about they want to grow from increase it by 100% or 50%, it's like, and they're a small business, they don't have the resources to advertise to the amount a big company maybe does. It can be overnight, everything can happen, right? But usually there has to be this, is it for you with where you are at right now really achievable to target that? Or should you start, as we said again, is this goal up here is beautiful, but what are the goals before that so that it's really something you can work towards? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I love what you said that it has to be achievable for you. Like you have to consider your own situation, not just, oh, well, my neighbor works out 5 times a week, so why can't I? Like that's not gonna that's not gonna actually produce results. So yeah, you need to consider your own situation. If someone who's got kids, they have a lot less time than someone who doesn't generally. So you're not going to be able to make as big a changes in your life in the same time period. So I think what I see a lot that sets people back is the comparison with others and trying to keep up and not taking into account your own situation, and then setting unachievable goals, and then like we said before, giving up straight away because they're not achievable for you.
Yeah, and I think in that it's also important for people, because sometimes when this is addressed, for some people it's maybe like, so my beautiful, wonderful, big dream is not possible, right? So I'm exaggerating right now, but it's the truth, right? It's like, no, it's not about that your dream is not good. It's just about that you target already for up here. And I repeat myself over and over again, but I think often that is where some people drop already, because if they can't right away reach up here, they just stop. And achievable means that you think, okay, even if I want to achieve up here, but it's right now not possible for whatever reason, because you maybe first need the resources, then maybe the first goal should be, okay, how do I get the resources that I need to achieve that up there? And then what is the next step? And I think sometimes that's important to understand, that achievable doesn't mean that you have to cut your entire dream and vision. It just means that you have to slow down, step back, and really assess what is the first step that I can achieve to get closer to the bigger dream. But the first goal, it should always be go from achievable to achievable and achievable, and then one day you are where you want to be.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, you can still have your long-term plan, like where I want to be in 10 years, ideally, but you need milestones between that. And yeah, you're exactly right. It's very much that all or nothing thinking, that unhelpful thinking pattern, where it's like all or nothing. You either achieve the dream or you don't. It's like, well, no, there's so much in between. And then people get so kind of embarrassed or ashamed when they don't make a big change. They have to take those baby steps. But you just have to let that go and kind of let your ego go sometimes, and just admit like, no, I can't do that. I gotta be realistic. I gotta make this achievable. I gotta take those baby steps and be okay with that in yourself as well. So there is always mindset work that is needed to be done usually when it comes to this kind of thing, especially if you've got really big goals over the long term. It can be hard to get your mindset around doing those little things.
And I mean, like with that also just came to mind when you mentioned that, it's like the first two, and you know how hard it is to start a business, but the first 2 to 5 years of starting a business are the hardest years, and a lot of businesses stop in these 5 years. Some say even 2 to 3 years, but I would expand it to 5 years, because these are the critical years. And I think that's also something where this achievable comes in again. When we start setting a goal and start going on a journey, we need to understand that there will be obstacles, but it doesn't mean that it's not achievable. It's just we need to be wise on how we phrase it and how we put it. And I think that's also where often comes in what we do, right? To sit down with clients, and where we also have our own coaches or mentors, where we sit down and we reflect back, is it really achievable, no? Or what do I need to hold on? Because as you said, the mindset will then decide. If I don't get right away, and that is also a society thing, if you don't get right away what we dream of, people stop, because you can get so fast everything everywhere. But building something up for yourself, be it living healthier, starting your own business, right? Even starting a podcast, right? Everything requires work, and it's not something you just do overnight. As I said, miracles can happen, but usually it requires work. And I think, yeah, that's what
don't rely on miracles.
So like, it can happen. I don't want to decline the people who did it overnight, but the reality for most of the people is it requires work. And most people who are today having big successful things, and I mean by that, be it successful families, be it a very good health, be it a good business, it depends on however you define success. They really work towards it, and they didn't give up in these first 2 to 5 years, right? And I think that makes a difference to say, like, okay, it is part of the journey.
Yeah, 100%. And that actually kind of ties into the next one. So the next letter is R, which there's debate. Is it relevant or is it realistic? I would quickly touch on realistic because it links back to what you were just saying. But this idea of, you got to plan for it to be hard. It wouldn't be a goal that you wanted to achieve if it was easy. You'd just be able to get up and do it straight away. It wouldn't mean anything. So you got to expect it to be hard and be prepared for it to be hard, and kind of almost plan for it. Because if you go in with this idealistic mindset, like, oh, I'm going to totally change my life, it's going to be awesome. And then the minute anything hard happens, you're just going to give up. So it's like being realistic about, well, actually, what am I willing to put in? Am I willing to put in that effort? And basing it off that. So I guess, like with the podcast example, am I actually willing? Do I have the time? Is it realistic for me to aim to put out 6 episodes this year? I think it is. I think it is for me, but it's something that you have to weigh up. If I said, oh, I wanted to do 52 episodes and I want to start next week, I'm definitely going to give up immediately. I already know, because that would be freaking hard. Way beyond my capacity. So, yeah, plan for it to be hard, but don't make it too hard, which is where you have to balance all of these things and get your mind straight as well. And the other R is relevant. So it kind of ties in as well. You want your goal to be relevant to your, like, kind of long-term plan. Like, there's no point if I said, I don't know, what wouldn't be relevant? Like with my podcast, for example, if I decided I didn't want a business, I actually wanted just to be like make a YouTube channel or something, then my podcast, that's not relevant, right? Like if you wanted to be healthy, but then you set another goal, I don't know, I'm struggling to come up with examples, but the goal just needs to be relevant to your life plan. It needs to drive the results that you're looking for, right? So what are your long-term results that you want? If it's money, how much do you want to save, or what are you actually saving for? And make sure the goal and the little milestones are relevant for that.
Yeah, and I mean, like, goal. I think like what I'm hearing when you're saying that, it's actually beautiful, because I mean, like, you're cheating because we had conversations before, but you put a lot of content, like we both, yes, we have our work where we work with clients and where we go much more in depth, but we do also a lot of social media work where we try to educate and inform people, technically for free. And I think sometimes then you starting a podcast is another channel where you actually do that. You know what I mean? Like, because not everyone is on Instagram, not everyone is on social media, but a lot of people listen nowadays to podcasts, right? So there's again the relevance, right? Because you use your kindness of informing people and trying to help them grow and put it into the podcast. Or did I misunderstand that?
Yeah, no, that's right. So yeah, it is relevant to my longer term business plan, because like a way to get people in, a way to reach more people, help more people. So there's the relevance there. Yes, thank you for time. I was struggling.
Wonderful. Yeah. But I think also with the relevant, I think it is so important, and I recently produced some stuff about that, and it's about for example, what you define as success is important to understand, right? Because some people set goals that are in alignment with the success definition of other people, but not with their own. And they're not even realizing it. They're just like, why am I not motivated? Why I'm frustrated? What makes it not work out for me? And especially the why question is very dangerous, right? But to understand that it needs to be relevant for you even in the personal goals. Like if you understand what things mean to you, then it will be easier for you to understand what is actually relevant to you. Be it with business, be it with health, be it with whatsoever. Some people, for example, when it's about their physical health, some people just want to be more healthy. You know what I mean? Like either lose a bit of weight, or it's more about eating healthier. And some people, they want to become really lean. So each of these things are very different, right? So the goals will look very different. But they are often, people put it just in one pot, you know, they call it, I want to be fit. So in their head, they mix it all up, you know, and then it's hard for them to stay relevant with their goals, because they put something like, for example, a fitness trainer has other goals for his personal fitness than someone who just wants to lose baby weight. Yeah. And so you can't put in your goals exactly the same training what a fitness trainer does, right? That's why we have fitness trainers that tell us usually what to do, you know. They learned that. That's the same thing like with coaching, right? We try to help people understand actually themselves, so that they understand what is relevant to you. How do you define success? And I think that is sometimes the most important question. How do you define X, Y, Z? What does it mean to you? And I think once you have the answer to that, you know how something is relevant or not relevant to you. And then in that context, you say, oh, maybe it's not the right goal for me. Or maybe it is a perfect goal. But I think sometimes conversations help us to realize our relevance, like what we think is relevant and what is not relevant.
Yeah, oh, 100%. And I mean, especially a coaching conversation where it's very much you're talking to someone who is normally a third party who doesn't know much about you. They can bounce things back and they come at it from a very different way. It's kind of like a sounding board. And then when you actually hear it back, it can hit really differently. So yeah, I know I've had a lot of coaching conversations, just helping people get clear on like what their values are and what they truly are, not what everyone else thinks they should be. And again, dropping that comparison is really important here too. Dropping the comparison and not just trying to be what someone else is, actually figuring out, no, this is me, this is true to me, and this goal is aligned with
or you go back to mindset and self-leadership, right? Which are our passions. We always go back.
Always.
Yes, that's right. Yes, and I mean, like in the end, we come to when we smart ends with a T, very nice and sharp, and it's time bound or timely, depending on what source people have. They have different words, but usually it's time bound. Timely means the same thing, and it means that your goal needs to be achievable and realistic and relevant, and it needs to be in a certain time frame. So when you set a goal, for example, I just abused your, I use your example podcast. If you say, I want to start a podcast, and it's like, okay, but you never set a time frame. I mean, you had already a time frame, right? But if you never set a time frame, it's like, okay, when do you start, right? So there are many questions. The same with me. Okay, I have my goal on increasing my business. Okay, I personally, for each step, I need to set a time frame and say, okay, till when do I want to do that step? Till when do I want to do that step? Till when, you know, until when do I want to be able to expand to so and so many clients, right? I think it's always a matter of being able to put something in a good time frame. Or if, again, going back when I talk to entrepreneurs, and then they say, okay, I want to improve my business, and I talk to them, okay, what do you want to do? And then we talk about everything in the end, like, okay, what is the time frame? And if they have very, again, vague time frame or not a fixed time frame, nothing will happen. I can promise you that. They will do for 1 or 2 weeks, okay, but if they have this till the end of the year, they want to increase, as I said, their revenue, or they want to whatever, get more customers, a certain number, and then they say till the end of the year. Suddenly they have this, ooh, I have a deadline, you know, and deadlines For some that work, some that don't work, but with
Mm-hmm.
goals, they should always be there. The same is, for example, when it's about people trying to get healthier, when I talk to people, then it needs to be a time frame for certain steps so that they can, and again, go back and measure it. Because in the end, they will look and say, okay, till the end of the year, I want to achieve X, Y, Z. And till then, I want to, in the middle, for example, you cut it half and you can assess how is it going. And I think that's why it's important. If you have a time frame, you can halfway through stop and pause and say, okay, how is it going for me? What is working for me? What's not working for me? Because then you can reassess, fix things or adjust things so that towards the end of the year you can improve the things. So I think sometimes that is very important to really reflect more on what is, again, in a realistic time frame. So when we go to SMART, all the goals come back, the words come back together, right? Because it's more like a circle, right? What is the realistic time frame? Yeah, what is a specific time frame, you know? If the time is not set, it will be hard for people.
Yeah. I know. Well, I think I was listening to a podcast about time today, and it was just about how time expands. So if you give yourself 2 hours to do a task, or you give yourself 4 hours to do a task, either way, you're going to fill up that time with the task. You know, so if it's 4 hours, you'll probably procrastinate, do a little thing over here, do a little thing over there. If it's 2 hours, you're more likely to just get to the point. But either way, it's going to take up the time that you've allocated. So yeah, that's very interesting. But I think with the time, it also takes some trial and error sometimes. And you know, don't be afraid, because people can setting it too soon. If you need to push it back, you know, sometimes you have to push it back. Like, I don't like seeing my clients be very all or nothing about it. If they set a time frame, the time frame is there as a guide, and it takes trial and error to figure out how long this stuff's going to take. So you know, I don't want people to get disheartened if they set a time frame and they don't make it, or if they do need to extend it, because I think it just takes a bit of practice sometimes. Or sometimes you'll get started on something and you're like, oh wow, I've totally underestimated how long this would take. And if you need to expand it, you need to expand it.
But I think also in that it's very important to point out that sometimes, I mean, like, all of us over the last 5 years experienced that life happens, things happen in life that are uncontrollable, right? All of us have this pause, you know, and I think sometimes when we plan something, when we set SMART goals, that is when we go from plan it from our normal situation. Okay, usually we plan our life from our normal situation, the starting point as we are right now. But sometimes life happens. I think sometimes that's where we need to be able to make it, to see the difference of if we plan something and then things don't work out because we sabotaged ourselves, because that's also sometimes the question, right? Sabotaging, and that's why we have conversations with our clients, right? To reflect that, what is the issue? But many times it can be that just things in life that are not really in our power or control happen, and then we need to stop and say, okay, is it still realistic to set this time frame? Is this goal in your new circumstances realistic? And I think that is important, is reassessing your goals at certain points, to like, okay, what is really realistic for me right now? And I think as you said, then not to feel guilty or feel ashamed that we need to reassess things, right? But to step back and say, like, okay, wait a minute, was it self-sabotage, or was it circumstances, or even someone else sabotaging us? Can also happen, you know, and then to go from there. So I think it's absolutely right to not get disheartened, but to really reflect what is the problem in the room.
Yeah, and reflect honestly on that. Like you said, it can be hard to identify your own self-sabotage, which we all have it somewhere. So honestly reflecting, and it can be hard to reflect. I mean, you know, that's why coaching helps people, because like I said, it makes it easier. But if you are self-reflecting, it's always just about, not judging, just, oh, how have I done this? And being honest with yourself. It's going to really help in the whole process.
Yeah.
Perfect. Any other takeaways?
I think we got the main things that we want to share with our listeners.
I think so. Let me do a quick summary. I'll do a quick summary for everyone. So we've covered quite a lot, actually. We've covered basically the whole goal setting process. The very first thing we talked about was, well, should I just go through the SMART? I'll just go through the SMART criteria. So we'll start with the S, which is specific. Your goal has to be specific. You don't want to have this vague fantasy. You want to actually narrow it down, get specific. This is my goal. And we talked about the benefits as to why you have to do that. Also, to do it specific, it has to be measurable. You have to be able to know, have I achieved this goal? Where am I in the progress of achieving this goal? Starting a podcast is very vague. What does that mean? Anyone can go and start a podcast. What does that actually mean? You have to make it specific. You have to make it measurable. I want to start a podcast for my business in this time frame, and that means this. So you know when you've achieved the goal, you have something to work towards. Then we've got achievable. Your goal has to be actually achievable, and we spoke about needs to be achievable for you, not for the neighbor, not for like your ideal version of yourself. It's achievable for you as you are right now, and you have to be very honest with yourself. And you know, you might have to rein it in if you've got big goals, if you're a perfectionist, if you're all or nothing, you might have to rein it in, and that's okay. And you don't need to get down about it or compare yourself to others. So it always has to be achievable for you, and it always has to be relevant for you and your situation and for your longer term plan. Like, is this goal actually relevant for my life? And in that, am I doing this for the right reasons? Do I actually like my reasons why I've put this goal down? And you're going to need to like your reason, because when it gets hard, you need something to hang on to. And we also talked about be realistic in it probably is going to be hard at some point, right? If you want to go in expecting, yeah, this is going to be a challenge, but I've got it, I've got this, and not just giving up the second it gets hard, because it will get hard. If it was easy, you would not need to set a goal. You would just do it straight away. And then the very last thing is timely, time-bound. Make it have a deadline. And like we said, it might be trial and error. You might not be able to be very good at setting deadlines straight away, but you need to have a time period for when you want to achieve the goal by. And, you know, like you said, it might take regular check-ins. You might have to assess your life situation, where you are, and it might need to be pushed back. It might need to be brought forward if you've given yourself too much time and you're just kind of procrastinating because you don't have a proper deadline, which I know I definitely do. I'm so bad for that. I need to have a deadline, or else I just do nothing until like the day before. So I think that is,
you summed it up very, very well. I'm thinking out it all.
Okay, perfect. Well, thanks, Linda. Thanks for joining me on this call. We will have the replay. I think we'll have the replay on both of our Instagrams. If you want to rewatch anything, maybe when you're setting your next goal, you can come listen to us, take notes. But yeah, thanks for being with us.
And feel free to reach out to us if you ever are in a point where you feel like you would like to have help with setting goals or any reflection. Amber and I love what we do. We are always happy to help you, and you just need to reach out to us. We are happy to be there for you.
100%. 100%. Yeah. Perfect. All right.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks so much, Linda. Enjoy your day. It's
yes,
morning there, isn't it? You're in Germany.
It's shortly before 11 here, a.m.
Oh, yeah. 11 a.m. Oh, yeah. It's 7:39 p.m.
Yeah, our time difference, but we still managed. See, because we set goals.
Yes, we had a time frame.
We did it
deadline.
Smart.
To it, no matter what, even though we were a bit. Exactly. All right. Thanks,
Thank you, guys.
We will talk
Bye.
next time. Bye.